Nearly every time I tell this story, I have trouble sleeping for a few days afterwards. It's something that happened to me personally, so I relive it each time. It's been a while since I've told it to anyone, so I figured it was about time. I was away for college my freshman year, living on campus, adjusting to dorm life. I was sheltered growing up, so I was excited to go out on my own and be free, so to speak. I didn't know what to expect. I had read all the pamphlets and watched videos about campus and dorm life, but this was going to be my first time, like many others, that I would be away from my parents out on my own. Plus, I didn't even have a job in high school or a boyfriend. I wasn't allowed to go to most school functions that were held at night, regardless of how much supervision there was, so I cannot stress how big of a change I was about to embark on. I arrived on campus about a week before classes were starting, and I happened to be the first to arrive in my dorm, so I got first pick of the beds. I chose a room off in the corner with a decent amount of space and only one other bed in it. I didn't want a triple or quadruple room. I wasn't ready for that much socialization. The first day, my parents helped me bring everything up to my room and unpack a bit, before my mom tearfully said goodbye and made me promise to call her every day and come home as often as possible. I just planned to unpack and possibly wander around campus a little to get a better feel for it and find where to eat, get books, and the following day probably find my classrooms. As I was putting sheets on my mattress, I noticed the side of the writing desk had something etched in it. Peering closer, I read, R.I.P. Kelsey, 2007. 2007, so 10 years ago, I said out loud. I found it a little odd the tribute was carved into the side of a writing desk instead of somewhere it would be more seen, but I figured maybe Kelsey was the friend of someone who slept in this bed at some point, and that person wrote it during their grieving process so they could see it nightly. I was no stranger to the grieving process, having lost a brother and 2 grandparents at this point, so I knew the grieving process was different for everyone. Later, I headed off to find the bathrooms, which I knew were somewhere close, because Mom had pointed them out when we were moving stuff in. I was shocked to see in the stall I was using the same thing etched in a very obscure place, right above the toilet paper holder. R.I.P. Kelsey, 2007. As I was unpacking my clothes into the smaller dresser, I heard a noise coming from the commons area. I knew no one else was here with me, so there was no point in calling out. I made my way into the room, not really remembering what everything looked like before, but I was pretty sure the couch wasn't tipped over on its back the whole time. My mom was huge on detail. She would have insisted my dad help her put it back up. But a couch doesn't just tip over on its own either, so it had to be like that earlier. I shrugged it off, heading back to finish unpacking. I couldn't flip an entire couch upright by myself, so no sense in stressing over it. By this time, it was time for a break to grab some dinner. But since school hadn't started yet, I doubted the cafeteria was open, so I'd have to Google search nearby restaurants. I settled on ordering pizza, and thankfully the place offered the option of plates and cutlery because I had nothing. First thing I didn't think to bring that needs to go on a list? Paper plates and plastic cutlery, I said, writing it down. I was suddenly starved, so when the pizza arrived, I scarfed down about 2 full slices and suddenly needed something to drink. I remembered a vending machine not too far down the hallway and went to grab a Pepsi and a bottle of water for later. When I returned, my plate was on the ground. So were all the extra plates, utensils, and Parmesan packets. Dang it, I needed those, I said, gathering them to throw in the trash since they had landed face down. I felt something was off, but I couldn't explain it at the time, nor can I now. When I returned from the vending machine, There was a thick, uncomfortable energy in the room, and I should have turned around and left then, but I didn't know anyone. I was 300 miles away from home, and the school offices weren't open. It was after 4 p.m., so I did my best to shrug it off and continued on with my night. I didn't have the small TV I brought with set up yet, so I propped my tablet up and put something on Netflix, while reading the welcome catalog my RA had given me. I was intently focused on whatever I was reading at the time, when the tablet flew off the desk, almost hitting me on the bed. It flew with such force that there was no way it had just fallen away from the object that was holding it up. It took me nearly an hour to recover and calm down. I wasn't sure I'd sleep, but I knew I needed to try, because it was getting late and I was exhausted from moving in. So I turned off the lights and repositioned the tablet in a way that if it flew again, it wouldn't knock me out in my sleep. I had finally drifted off to sleep for an unknown amount of time when I was woken by the sound of things being thrown around or something getting ransacked. My heart started pounding. It felt like it was going to explode right out of my chest. I couldn't breathe. I was in full panic mode. I had checked the door to make sure it was locked before I went to bed, but maybe the lock wasn't all the way turned. And if it was, how hard could it actually be to credit card open a dorm room? It's probably super easy. Not sure what to do, I grabbed the only thing I had to defend myself, the pepper spray my dad had given me before he left. It was a small canister on a keychain, so I hid it in the palm of my hand. I slowly opened the door to my bedroom and saw stuff flying around, but no one was there. As if I was spotted, the commotion suddenly stopped. I flipped the light switch and was in shock at what I saw. The couch had been tipped totally opposite of what it was earlier. The 2 armchairs were flung in opposite directions. The coffee table was on its side, and one of the paintings on the wall in a glass frame had fallen and shattered. This was it. I was done being in the room, especially alone. I went running down the hall to my RA's room, and thankfully she let me in. I stayed with her overnight after she went to check out my room and saw the mess. The next morning, she was able to get me transferred, only because another student had dropped out the previous day. I was so appreciative of whoever dropped out. Did I wish them well? Absolutely. But was I happy they dropped out so I didn't have to stay 1 more minute in that room? Also absolutely. Wow, sounds like you were dealing with one angry spirit. I'm glad you were able to switch rooms though. Whoever dropped out probably saved your sanity. If you have a paranormal story to share, email it to the address in the description below. Thank you for being patient with me as I work through my medical emergency. I think I'm on the road to full recovery. Please like the video and subscribe if you haven't. And with that, see you tomorrow, friends.